Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. Sorry we're starting so late today. We had some technical difficulties, but they've been solved, and this is going to be a great interview today because we're going to talk about how you could possibly reverse the aging of your immune system and how that could impact your life in general. Later in the show, we're going to be joined by gentleman farmer Will Harris from White Oak Pastures to talk about a recent article that was in the Economist suggesting that beef should be treated like coal, like fossil fuel. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But first, of course, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods, makers of the Tasty Pastry. Tasty Pastry was designed to be a Pop-Tart in disguise. It was supposed to be a healthy Pop-Tart. It's so much more. It is less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high-quality protein, less than 4 to 5 impact carbs if you're a carb-counting person. And we are all in this audience, carb conscious, let's say. You can go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary to learn more. If you decide to buy them, use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. I'll tell you this right now. If you do get them, be prepared to fight with your kids over them because unlike protein bars, which your kids think taste like crap, your kids will want to eat all of these before you have a chance to. So check it out. Now I'm going to bring my guest on, and that is Nicolina Luck. Oh, I don't think her camera is. Let's see. Add to stream. She's not there. I need her to turn her camera on now. I hope she can hear me. Wrong overlay. This show is turning out to be a real problem today. I don't know who is on the camera right now, who Zori is.
Carl, yes, I'm trying to get hold of Nicolina. So just bear with us for a moment. I'm sorry.
Okay. Is she there to get on camera?
She will be as soon as she joins, yes.
Here she comes. Let's remove
Hello.
that. Hi, how are you, Nicolina?
Good. Sorry to be 5 minutes late. We had a little bit of an emergency.
Okay. Well, let's pick it right up from the beginning. So we're going to be talking about glycans today, and in as such, we're going to be discussing. Well, let's start out at the beginning. I'm trying to regain my composure here. What are glycans? Explain to my audience what glycans are.
Glycans are sugars, so they're complex carbohydrates, and they're one of the 4 components of your cell biology. So we have proteins, we have fats, DNA, which creates the proteins, and then the glycans coat all of these proteins and change how they actually function.
So glycans, as the name implies, have something to do with glucose, right? They're somehow specially bonded oligosaccharides or something, no?
No, nothing to do with glucose. So glucose is more of a random, or body's response to sugars. And these are sugars that you actually produce as a structural component of your cell. So there's a network, like for the glycans we look at, there's a network of over 40 different genes which regulate the structure of the glycan. So it's a complex trait, and they incorporate both the genetic influence and the influence of your current behavior and environment.
Okay. So what role do glycans play in the immune system?
They regulate inflammation. So they would, different structures on it would have a more pro or anti-inflammatory property. So as you're aging, their composition would change, and you would accumulate these pro-inflammatory structures which activate inflammation, and you would lose the anti-inflammatory ones which would suppress the inflammation. So you have disinflammation aging, or this accumulation of low-grade chronic inflammation with age.
So glycans, that's what I was going to say. So glycans have a role in chronic inflammation then as we age.
Correct.
How do glycans change as we age? Do we have more of them, or do they somehow they malfunction? What happens as we age with glycans?
They change in composition. So you have more of the good ones, you have less of the good ones and more of the bad ones. So you have a dysregulated immune system. You would overreact. You have this background level of something we call sterile inflammation. It doesn't necessarily have a pathogen cause. And you would overreact to a threat, and you wouldn't suppress this inflammation fast enough. And actually, the biggest risk factor is not having some of these anti-inflammatory glycans, which are positive.
Okay, so ever since Horvath, we've been looking at methylation clocks. Before that, they were telomeres. And everybody's been searching for finding the answer to biological age versus chronological age. And we just did a show yesterday on naked mole rats, because they are long-lived rodents and they have some interesting similarities in their methylation clocks as we do in humans. And I asked the two scientists yesterday the same question I'm going to ask you. If we look at glycans to try to determine biological age, does it really mean anything? For instance, if I am only 50 years old chronologically, but you look at my glycans and you say to me, my gosh, Carl, you're 85 years old biologically. So can I expect to die in the next couple of years?
So we can't predict mortality yet, but we can predict the future risk of hospitalization with the next 10 years. So there was a nice study. This was actually independent, so it wasn't done by us, but we analyzed some of the data a few years ago. And they put all of these different aging clocks together. So they had proteomic clocks, metabolomic clocks, two versions of the epigenetic clock, the first generation, so the Horvath and the Hannum. And they had all the clinical biomarkers, and then modeled an aging clock based on all the biomarkers you can do at your doctors at the moment. And the glycans and epigenetic track general aging, so they wouldn't be risk specific. But the acceleration of the glycan age clock and the metabolic clock was most predictive of future hospitalization within the next 10 years from the broadest range of causes. So a large number of it, from infectious, cardiovascular, metabolic, so forth.
So this show is 16 years on the air. This is the longest running health and fitness podcast in the world. And I've interviewed so many people over the years, from Aubrey de Grey, and I could list names who each had their own theory of aging, and each had their own theory of how to prevent the sick aging phenotype by focusing on this. Like with Aubrey de Grey, it was all about mitochondrial function. We've had telomeres, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared. Now we have the Horvath data and methylation clocks. And this glycan, actually, my friend Ron Penna said to me just last night that he believes that glycans are more accurate at assessing biological age than anything else. And so I'm excited that you're here today. So I guess the question I have for you is there a place for all of these to be assessed to come up with a more accurate, like if we take Horvath and we take glycans and maybe we even look at telomeres and we triangulate this data and we have a better, yeah, you're shaking your head. Yes, huh?
That's what they did in the study. So they had something they called a megaomics clock. So they put all of the different clocks together, and they saw, and the problem was it was too predictive of chronological age. So the clocks which were very predictive of chronological age, they lost the clinical relevance. Well, so I think what's going to be most interesting in the future is the difference between these clocks. So maybe somebody has a good score on one, but has a very different one, a different score on another, and then maybe his aging phenotype will be connected to that clock that's accelerated. So I think that could be a future view. On glycans, we know it's connected to this low-grade chronic inflammation. We know that they change up to decades before specific diseases, so certain structures would change. And some we know that they're even causal of the disease. So we're not looking at just information. So I think one problem with a lot of them is they're looking at a whole pool of information and we don't yet understand the mechanism. Well, we really understand the mechanism behind it, which is inflammation.
Okay. So I've been saying for the better part of the past 8 or 9 years that when we talk about inflammation, we're talking about the army of the immune system. In a healthy individual, inflammation is the first line of defense when there is a bad actor occurring in the body. The body turns on inflammation, but then the repair mechanisms come in behind it, and you have a resolving of the inflammation. It goes full cycle. Inflammation, repair, all better, we're done. But in the chronically inflamed individual, this doesn't happen. The final steps never really occur. And when we talk about inflammation, we're talking about the immune system. And since we all agree that 70% of the immune system resides in the gut, we're talking about the gut when we talk about inflammation and when we talk about the immune system. What role does the gut play in the glycan story?
Huge role. So we don't know the full extent of it. We do have quite a bit of data comparing to microbiome. And we have, and most of this is clinical data, so they look at certain diseases, but we look at fecal microbiome transplants. But and if you improve the immune system in the gut, you also improve the immune system in the blood. And from that, there's some general rules. So you can improve your gut just by increasing the diversity of food, particularly plants in your diets. And we do have lots of case studies where individuals just increase the diversity in their diet and they would see a reduction in their age score.
Interesting. Yeah, the nice thing about the gut and the microbiome is it can be influenced quickly through diet, the dietary changes, which makes me suspect of the whole biological age. See, I'm very suspect of biological age as a real thing. And the reason is, if today I'm 63 years old. So let's say my biological age is 70. But I change my diet. In 2 weeks, I get tested again. They go, oh, your biological age now is 63. How could, that short period of time of changing my diet have any long-term effect on my health unless I do it for years? And so this idea that I can change my biological age literally so quickly, I kind of think it's snake oil right now. Personally. I do.
Well, we look at the adaptive immune system. So it's really your immune system through years. And I was the most skeptical person out there. So this is actually coming from my father's research. And he told me he can do this about 11 years ago now. And, I don't think I believed him until a little while ago. Right. And they actually published. So the first paper we published was the same year that Horvath published his paper. So it was the 10th of December, 2013. So this has been around here for a very long time on the scientific front. But because there's so few labs around the world that look at glycans or could look at them in volume, it hasn't really catched on as much as some of the other sites. But there is very good science showing that you will gain extra years of healthy life if you influence it. And a lot of it is very logical. So the first intervention studies they did was weight loss. And that's very obvious and logical, but also caloric restriction. Mm-hmm. And then they hope that they'll find the magic diet. So there'll be one diet that works for everybody. And that one's just in being drafted. So we looked at 1,000 people on 5 different diets. And in each of these diets, half people respond good, half people respond bad. So there's no one individual diet that works for everybody.
There never will be. People who are, like in India, there's a large group of people who have been vegetarians, vegans for hundreds of years. Their microbiota is designed to extract so much more from vegetables than say someone who's comes from a long line of omnivores. And so the pursuit of the perfect human diet is like saying, we are going to discover the one size of shoe that everyone should wear. You can't. If I'm a size 11, I can't put my foot in a size 6. I just can't. So I think the pursuit of the perfect human diet is erroneous from the beginning. However, the perfect diet for you is achievable. That's my opinion.
And the question is, how do you evaluate that? And also, we can't know in advance right now, so we're trying to see if maybe we can do this in the future. But you can do it as an experiment. So you go on a certain diet because you're already investing all the time, energy into this diet, and then you can see if that actually works for your long-term health. And you can have an objective biological measurement instead of just blindly following advice from a book or somewhere, wherever you found it was popular.
So what about the metabolically deranged? What about people who are pre-diabetic or full-on diabetic, insulin resistant? They are not metabolically flexible. They obviously are inflammation factories. What's going on in them with the glycan population?
So we see a lot of, well, even predictive power. So we have some, looking at specific glycans. So this is not glycanages, it's certain glycans, which are specific to diabetes. And we would also see the glycans change a decade before you develop the disease. But of course, if somebody has high dysregulated glucose, insulin resistant, high HbA1c, they will have a poor score. But if it's a well-managed disease, they can also do fine. And that could be well-managed with diet in the early phase, also well-managed with medication. And then an interesting drug is potentially metformin. We haven't had a placebo-controlled trial, but there's a lot of our customers who do it. And we saw a few case studies where they would reverse a decade within an 8-month time frame on metformin. And they wouldn't be pre-diabetic or diabetic, but they would maybe have a little bit of a dysregulated glucose response. So there could be a sensitivity towards that. It has more of a benefit, and it may not work for everybody, but it's interesting that it does have quite a dramatic effect.
Are there any particular microbes that seem to be favorable to healthy functioning glycans? For instance, you just said metformin, right? So everybody's taking Akkermansia probiotics now because the population of Akkermansia increases in the gut in the presence of metformin. However, in other compounds that produce similar results as metformin, they don't. For instance, berberine and or resveratrol, they don't necessarily increase the population of Akkermansia. So do we have, bifidobacteria has been identified now because it's present in human breast milk, and babies have high concentrations in their guts when they're young. Are there any microbes that seem to help the glycan story?
We don't know yet. We don't have the data. But in terms of proteins, for example, high levels of zonulin would have a big impact, and they would even be predictive of progression of certain diseases. So there is, and also you don't necessarily need to be celiac. If you have high zonulin level, it's probably connected to stress and your gluten response. So I was also very skeptical about the gluten-free diet. I thought it doesn't work with the microbiome theory, but seeing more of this data, I would say yes, 100% glucose would increase the levels of zonulin and activate inflammation.
So here's a funny thing. There's a blog post by Alex Leaf on my website, superhumanradio.net, and it's probably at least 6 or 7 years old. And Alex did a very, very thorough review of all the available literature to determine that even if you don't suffer from celiac disease, gluten produces a rise in inflammation in everyone that eats it. Now, some of us tolerate it better than others. But the interesting thing about it is that gluten is not really good for anyone, it turns out. Now, and so from what you're saying, it sounds like that maybe gluten triggers inflammation in the glycan population?
Well, increases the level of zonulin, which then increases the distance of the cells in the gut. So you have leaky gut, and then that causes inflammation.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. What role does hormones play Are there any correlates between hormones and glycans? And I want to just set the table here. We've done shows about oxytocin and L-reuteri. We know that they seem to be symbiotic. When oxytocin levels are high, L-reuteri in the gut is high, and also inflammation drops in the presence of oxytocin. Oxytocin makes old rodents young again. So are there any correlates between hormone levels and glycan malfunction, if you will?
So we don't know about oxytocin, but we know for estrogen. So in terms of the immune system, we always saw quite a bit of a gender difference when we look at aging. So men would be very linear. They would just go up and down, accumulate the bad, lose the good. For women, they had a curve. So they will have less inflammation and a better functioning immune system in reproductive age. And they will have a very rapid shift when they enter, or even in perimenopause, before they enter menopause. And that can be prevented with replacement. And it can even be reversed post-menopause. So it's one area where we have some good research, which is placebo-controlled, where we would see that with the suppression of hormones, women age 9 years, and then with replacement, they stay in a healthy range. But also post-menopause on body-identical hormone replacement, they would reverse about 7 years after 3 months, and 10 years after 6 months.
Wow. That's fascinating. And, it makes perfect sense, right? When we're youthful, we have all of these hormones flowing through our bodies. And as we age, they start to recede and eventually they cease. And it just makes perfect sense that those hormones are messengers. They tell the body, look, I have a reductionist approach to certain things. And one of those is libido. So libido is the canary in the mine. When you lose your libido, you're probably sick, because our one job on this planet is to reproduce. And when we can't reproduce, or we're not capable of raising our reproduced children, the body shuts that stuff off. It says, no, you can't. Like women who are very athletic, they go on extreme diet, they lose their period. And that's because the body is saying, you're starving. We can't let you get pregnant because you'll never be able to take care of a baby. And so when I look at a lot of these things, and I look at, from an evolutionary perspective, the aging process, if you have a libido at 80, you're probably a lot healthier than the guy who doesn't have a libido at 80. I think that's a really simplistic view, but I think it's accurate. So when we talk about from an evolutionary perspective, do you see things from our past that misfit our modern world that are affecting the accumulation of bad glycans?
Well, there's a lot of health misconceptions, and I think you're right on the hormone. So we did have a few studies in men as well, and as if they have low testosterone, their glycans will be pro-inflammatory. If you replace it, they'll move in a positive direction, unless you block the aromatase, which is conversion of testosterone to estrogen.
Oh, yeah.
So even for men, it looks like the estrogen is a positive driver. So if you're looking at misconceptions of what you spoke about exercise, that was one other thing we looked at, and we were quite surprised. So we first did a small study in nursing home, moderate exercise and diet, and that had a mildly positive effect. And then we did a very big study of 1,000 people going to the gym for the first time, and we followed them for a year. And they were in their 40s and 60s going to the gym for the very first time. So they had a sedentary lifestyle, and they were in an intense diet and exercise program, and all of them kept getting older. And we were completely confused. We had no idea why these people were getting older. And then we looked at the smaller sports group to try and understand what's going on. And if we're just looking at interval training or interval sprints, a group of guys, they got younger within 3 months. So yes, exercise is good. It's positive stress. It activates us to fix ourselves and be younger and healthier. But when we looked at professional bodybuilding, and this was a cohort of women, we looked at one which was just in a diet and another cohort which was in diet and exercise program. Both of them became pro-inflammatory. Their glycans change in a negative way. Also, their gene expression change. All the other immune cells change, and they lose their cycle. So they suppress their gonadal hormones. And in the group which was just exercising, they recover after a regain and a period of recovery. But the ones which was dieting and exercising at the same time, it didn't recover in the period that we were following the study. So if you are exercising inappropriately, so you are over-exercising and restricting your calories, so you're in energy sufficiency and your body thinks it's starving, as you said, then you're not building good muscle. You're accumulating potentially scar tissue. And this may be one of the reasons why athletes have a bit of a shorter career and have a bit more of the age-related diseases earlier on. So there's a lot of misconceptions about how we get healthy. And one of those is go on an intense diet and exercise program at the same time, which is what everybody does when they go to the gym.
Right. So it sounds to me like the linkage between glycan misregulation and stress is clear, because extreme dieting is a stress on the body, extreme exercise is a stress on the body. And so clearly when you are that stressed, inflammation goes up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't have enough stress research, but there was an interesting study with PTSD where they looked at a cohort of people and they were on average 15 years older than the average population. So chronic stress is having a massive impact.
That's clear. So one of the things that I've learned looking at people who seem to age well, they don't have a particular diet. Some smoke, some don't, some drink alcohol, some don't. But the one thing I find about all of them is they have a regimented day. Every single day, they start the same way. They eat the same foods. If they have a beer, they have that beer. If they smoke a cigar, they smoke that cigar. But they do the same things day in and day out, which to me tells me that the body likes predictability. The body likes regimentation. The body likes eating at the same time and sleeping at the same time. And that lowers stress. And that lowered stress leads to longer and healthier life. This could be the reason, because the glycan, the inflammation is life is good. Life is abundant. We do the same things every day. We don't have to worry about anything. There's no stress in our world. What do you think about that?
I think that's a very interesting theory. I think we need some positive stressors, and eating the same thing every day is probably not the best thing, but 100% that has we're in the same place. We feel safe. We're not in a stressed environment. Also, resilience to stress. So one thing we haven't studied properly yet, but we see that meditators are on average about 10 up to 20 years younger. And we would even compare them to some of the drug intervention cohorts, and the meditator will be better than the person who's on all the special drugs. So managing our response to stress could be another way. But then also this positive acute stress is actually good for us.
Yeah, it's hormetic. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not machines. So if if your washing machine is broken, it's not going to fix itself. But if a human body gets injured, we're going to do our best to fix ourselves. So if we have this small way to wake up that system, which is acute stress, then we're kind of activating the body's natural system of repairing itself. So I don't think all stress is bad.
No, I agree with you. There's the hormetic effects of intermittent stresses. That which does not kill you makes you stronger. And that turned out to be very, very true. We're going to take one quick commercial break. When we come back, we've got lots more questions. Also, if you're watching live, feel free to post your questions, and we will work them into the show, I promise you. You are watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. C60, also known as Buckminster fullerene, is the most powerful, most versatile antioxidant in the world. It's been shown in studies to double the lifespan of rodents. We all know the importance of taking antioxidants to slow aging, reduce inflammation, and improve mitochondrial function and energy production. But there are literally hundreds of antioxidants that would cost you thousands of dollars to take every day. I take one. I take C60 from C360 Health. Revive and Rejuvenate are two blends that harness the power of C60. Don't waste another minute. Go to shrnetwork.biz/revive and use the code SHR for 15% off and free shipping inside the United States today.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Verso contains potent compounds proven to increase NAD+. NAD+ is arguably the most important molecule in the body, and without it, you would die in less than 30 seconds. It's responsible for a number of physiological processes, one being that it guides longevity genes called sirtuins to direct cells in the body to perform their jobs. NAD+ levels drop with age, and when they're low, there isn't enough to guide sirtuins, so your cells start to break down. This explains why the body ages and consequently wrinkles appear. There is less benefit to exercise. It takes longer to recover, and an older body is not resilient like a young body. Start reversing biological age now. Go to shrnetwork.biz/verso and use the code SHR for 20% off plus free shipping on your bottle of Verso today. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
Welcome back. We're talking with Nicolina. Is it pronounced Luck? The last name, Luck?
That's a nice one. No, it's Lau. But I like the Luck one. We can use it.
Good luck. Lau. Okay. And I want to let you plug your service because you actually have a lab that will test people's glycan levels, correct?
Yeah, we do.
Where can people find that?
So we operate globally. It is an at-home test you can do. And we are the largest lab for glycan analysis in the world. So we tested over 150,000 people, mainly from research. So it's biobanks around the world. And it's more human glycans than the rest of the world combined. Can I name it?
Yeah, no, I'm asking.
Okay.
Yeah, tell people how to find it.
Okay, so it's called Glycan Age, and you'll find our website, reference to all the studies, and a link for the lab.
glycanage.com, right? glycanage.com. So that's where people can go if they want to have their glycan levels tested. You know, I've been to this rodeo for too long to believe the whole biological age thing. What I do think it's more akin to is if I have a car, it's got 120,000 miles on it, and I don't change the oil ever, it's not going to last very long. And so if I change the oil periodically, I'm going to get the most I possibly can out of that car. Is it going to last 500,000 miles? Maybe not. But it's definitely not going to break down as soon as if I just leave the same oil in there indefinitely. And so I kind of think like glycan assessment, maybe even the Horvath assessment. It's more like, hey, is it time to change my oil? Then am I going to live longer? You know, because it's inevitable. My car is going to fail eventually, but it's going to fail sooner if I don't change the oil periodically. So if you look at these numbers and you go, oh, I've been driving with this oil too long, I need to do something to change that. And that could be, I've got to change my diet, sleep, my environment, exposure to chemicals, and so on and so forth, which I want to ask you about. So how does sleep affect glycans?
We haven't studied it, but from examples, I would say a lot. And we particularly see it at potentially post-childbirth. So we see women age rapidly post-birth. Some of it could be related to changes in hormones, but a lot of it could also be related to sleep. So I think of course, there's no perfect score. We're trying to personalize as much as possible. So we personalize it to where you live currently, gender, ethnicity, to make it as relevant as possible. But one day you'll have ultra personalized clocks, which would just be based on you. And I think those will be the most valuable. But it's a metric that's very stable if you're not changing anything, and it changes a year per year, so it does follow the aging curve. But then when you do affect something dramatically, you see a very significant change within a couple of months. So it gives you really good feedback that what you're doing is working or it's not working. And I think that's important. First, we need a motivation for that change because we don't know where you are. And the mileage analogy is perfect because you really don't know if you're doing damage or you're not. And this way you can know, and then you can be a little bit more motivated. And people take it personally. If somebody's aging score is higher, they are highly motivated to do something about it. So I think this is where it's useful. Yeah.
So now you said gender. So on a gender basis, all things being equal, do men tend to become more pro-inflammatory from glycan accumulation than women, or vice versa?
So men change more gradually. Women change dramatically around menopause. So yes. So women live longer. We have an average of 5 years extra to men, but actually we have more chronic conditions post-menopause. So I think it's quite equal on that side. Yes, and of course, the range is very big. So some women's glycans behave like men's glycans. So they follow the aging curve precisely. So yeah, it's very unique.
What about race? Is there any borders that we can look at? Europeans versus non-Europeans, African, sub-Saharan African versus anything that we can look at race?
Yeah, we did look at it before. So first we know that part of it is genes. So we know that about half of your glycan composition is governed by genes. And in the UK, we looked at the cohort of immigrants. So three different types of immigrants, first and second generation. And before that, we did a study that looked at 27 different populations. And the glycans correlated with life expectancy in a certain country, but also highly with the development index. So it wasn't really so much the ethnicity as much as it was the socioeconomic impact. And then in the immigrants, we saw that in the first generation, they looked like their original country. In the second generation, they started to look more like white Brits.
Right.
So environment plays a very huge impact. And yes, maybe part of it is genetic, but a huge part of it is environment, and probably a lot more than the.
So what you're saying is epigenetics do play a role in this, that because if we can change the way our genes express, then we can change the glycan population, right?
Yeah, and glycans change your epigenetics. So on the biology level, DNA creates the protein, and then you can change gene expression with epigenetics, but also the glycans around the protein change the protein post-translation. So it's beyond this epigenetic and genetic influence that you have.
Intermittent fasting is all the rage. I did my first show on intermittent fasting in 2008 when Dr. Mark McCarty published his first study on rodents with the every other day diet. And ever since then, intermittent fasting has been a cult. There's apps and everything. Does intermittent fasting have a beneficial effect on glycan and inflammation?
We haven't done a proper cohort for me to say yes or no. We have a theory of why it might, because if you're not eating food for a period of time, you also have glycans in the gut. So if you're not eating food, then we think that you even select, by keeping your glycans there, you select the bacteria you want to keep, so you keep the good ones. So there's a good theory that could be very positive. But we certainly have clients who've seen the opposite effect. And that was so far predominantly women, and they will usually have a thyroid issue at the same time. So I'm pretty sure that too much intermittent fasting is same as chronic stress, and it's not going to have a positive impact. So I think it's same as everything. It's the level of it to be positive, or it can be negative.
Have you looked? So over the years, we've talked about blood test assays, and epidemiologists put together the ranges. They look at the population. They say, well, this is the high and this is the low for a population. But if we look over the past 4 or 5 decades, we see certain, like testosterone levels. When I first started looking at testosterone levels, the low end was 480 nanograms a deciliter. Today, it's 320. And that's because we're looking at a snapshot of a sick population where testosterone levels are dropping, and we're adjusting the assay. Instead of saying, no, the assay stays where it is, we need to get people back up there, we're moving the target down lower to meet the population. Have you looked at glycan populations in individuals who are outside of the first world? In other words, have you looked at hunter-gatherers like the Nuigi and said, wow, their glycans look so much different? Well, because they're not eating pesticides. There's no glyphosate in their cereal. There's no, have you looked at those people to see maybe what our glycans should be like?
Yeah, so I can tell you a little story around that. I think going first to the blood ranges, that's a very interesting one. So in the first study, we looked at all these clinical biomarkers, and then we can explain why somebody's older or younger, up to 65% in men and 70% in women, by looking at those traditional blood markers, but they were not perfect. And the other difference there was probably prognostic. And we certainly have a lot of clients whose bloods look perfectly. Everything seems fine. They're normal, but they have a higher glycanate. So there is certainly something missing. And yes, the ranges are changing. That's looking at some of those nomad, or I forgot how you call the tribe, but it's interesting. And we don't have a published study, but I have a story around it. So there was a researcher that we collaborate with that went to the Tanzanian tribe, and he tested their microbiome and he tested their glycome. And their microbiome was phenomenal. They had the most diverse microbiome researchers have ever seen, and they didn't develop any diabetes or cardiovascular disease, although they had quite short life expectancy when you looked at the average, which some was maybe because the children they had more infant mortality, but their glycome was very poor. It was bad, and that was very opposite to what microbiome was showing. And one reason why, and one data set that we didn't look at there, is the human virome. And in a lot of these tribes, they eat a lot of wild game. And if they eat a lot of wild game, they have a lot of exposure to all kinds of different viruses that you usually wouldn't. And that has a damage on the immune system. And actually, most things that they would die from is infectious disease. So their immune system would decline over time. Oh, I can hear you.
How about now?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I can hear you now.
I have a new board on order. I have a bad button on this board somewhere. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to finish up this discussion with Nicolina Lauk about glycans. I have my next question, so you can be prepared for it, is oxidative stress and a relationship in glycan populations. Will Harris is in the green room. He's going to be joining us at the top of the hour when we talk about this recent article from The Economist, where they are comparing beef to coal and saying that just the way we have to get rid of coal, we have to get rid of beef, and we're going to challenge some of the suppositions in the article and kind of shoot holes in it. So stick around for that. That'll be interesting. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Stay tuned. You're watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. Feel free to post your questions if you're watching live. We'll be right back. If you've listened to Superhuman Radio for any length of time, you know I'm a big proponent of peptides. One of my favorites is GHK-Cu, the blue copper peptide. It has the ability to repair and regenerate more youthful expression of skin cells, reversing the signs of aging. Restore Cell's Stem Cell Awakening Serum, along with their other products, contains potent formulations of blue copper peptides and only the highest quality organic ingredients. Superhuman Radio listeners can now save 25% site-wide. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use the code SHR25. Remodel your skin today. MK Supplements grass-fed beef liver is from 100% pasture-raised New Zealand cattle. Unlike other manufacturers, they use a gentle freeze-drying method to turn fresh liver into a powder before filling it into gelatin capsules. Additionally, they don't use hexane or any other harsh chemicals to defat their organ meat. From the glass container and metal lid they use to package their products to the recyclable shipping materials they use for delivery, their goal is to provide the highest quality, most eco-friendly supplements on the market. Go to shrnetwork.biz/liver and use code SUPERHUMAN to receive 15% off your order today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at Synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Have you been struggling to achieve results in the gym? Trouble sleeping through the night? Overwhelmed with stress or anxiety? Look no further than Infiniwell supplements. They have designed products to address specific needs like muscle growth, hormone balance, sleep, and anxiety from the first use. Infiniwell helps you live well. Go to shrnetwork.biz/bewell. That's BEWELL and use code SHR20 and start living well today. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know that I have struggled to give up coffee for years. Coffee has destroyed my gut and it's impaired my health. Well, I haven't had coffee in months thanks to a product called Magic Mind. Magic Mind is the first nootropic blend I actually feel working. One shot and I'm good all day long. My memory is crystal clear and I'm able to function and have great focus without coffee or caffeine for that matter. If you want to try a product that really works, if you're like me and you want to give up coffee forever, or you just need something occasionally that will help you lift the brain fog, Magic Mind is your product. I promise you that this product you will feel when you use it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Magic Mind, all one word, and use the code SHR for a whopping 20% off your first order. The holidays are over and it's time to set your eyes on new goals for the new year. In the thick of winter and sick season, it's more important than ever to support your immune system so that you are strong, healthy, and able to tackle your 2022 goals. Did you know that one of the biggest ways you can boost your immunity is by supporting your gut health? It's true. In fact, 70% of your immune system is in your gut. That's why it's time to get Biome Breakthrough. Biome Breakthrough has powerful probiotics, prebiotics, as well as a one-of-a-kind ingredient called IGY Max. IGY Max is a patented egg-based protein protein that enhances gut health, reverses damage caused by antibiotics, and even helps with immunity threats. By taking Biome Breakthrough daily, you'll eliminate bad bacteria, feed good bacteria, build up your immunity, and repair your gut lining all at the same time. Go to shrnetwork.biz/biome and use code SHR for 10% off and get a full year, no questions asked, satisfaction guarantee.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. We're talking with Nicolina Lauk. We're talking about glycans and their relationship to your ability to aging well. Oxidative stress seems to age the body. Is there any relationship between oxidative stress / antioxidant use and glycans?
We have no data.
None.
So I wouldn't be able to say, unfortunately.
Okay.
But the antioxidant theory has been debunked a few times in the longevity side. So I think a little too much of it could actually be bad.
Yes, actually can promote cancers. Because so interesting thing about growth hormone. Growth hormone gets a really bad rap about cancer. We're told that growth hormone promotes cancer growth, and it does. It promotes all cell growth, good and bad. But an interesting thing about growth hormone is through its conversion to IGF-1, it creates a push-pull. Not only does IGF-1 stimulate the growth of cells, but it reduces reactive oxygen species, which has been known to actually kill tumor cells. So it's nothing is simple in the human body, and sadly, everybody just wants to know what's the one thing. And there is no one thing. That's an insulting question when you look at the complexity of the human body today. How about some of these supplements like NAD, resveratrol? A lot of them, interestingly, show the ability to keep blood sugar levels very, very normal. Do things that normalize blood sugar levels seem to have a beneficial effect on the glycan population?
They would do. We don't have any data yet on NAD or resveratrol. The only supplements we have a little bit of data on is a little bit of vitamin D, but I wouldn't say it's majorly convincing in terms of how much data we have. And then one study where eggs were fortified with omega-3s, and that did improve some glycans. It's also a very small study, so it needs to be replicated. But I think that's the supplement data we have so far. And of course, we want to evaluate all of them because there's so many of these products in the market. A lot of them were only validated on mice so far. There's not a lot of human data at all.
Right.
So I look forward to those studies to actually see the effects.
And the interesting thing about so vitamin D is very confusing. And the reason for that is because when we look at populations that live near the equator who are exposed to sun, we see a drop in heart disease. We see a drop in depression. We see a drop in Alzheimer's disease. We see all these beneficial effects. And then we do these studies where we give people bolus doses of vitamin D in a syringe, or we have them take vitamin D. And so much more is going on when we're exposed to the sun than just vitamin D production. The melanocortin system may actually be the reason that so many beneficial things happen from sun exposure, and we're giving all the credit to vitamin D. The other thing, what was the other thing you mentioned besides vitamin D? So omega-3s, they possess something called pro-resolvin mediators. I learned this from Elisa Profumo, the producer of the show. These pro-resolvin mediators do exactly what they say. They take an inflammation occurrence and they force it to resolve and finish its job. Instead of it just staying halfway done and chronic, it forces it. So that doesn't surprise me that that would have a beneficial effect on probably epigenetically on the expression of glycans, quite frankly. Yeah. Let's see here. I have another question for you. I scribble these things as I go along, but so we addressed that. So the carnivore diet is all the rage, thanks to a guy who appeared on my show back in 2014 named Dr. Sean Baker. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Are you?
No.
Okay. So Sean came on my show in 2014 promoting a website called N equals many, where he was asking people to switch to an all meat diet and eggs, fish, poultry, pork, and that's it. And exclude anything that grows out of the ground. And the backlash on him was just unbelievable. You're going to kill people. People need their vegetables. They need their fiber. And so now he is 6-7 years into this. He has literally millions of followers all over the world. And he is reversing disease. So the biggest disease category that he is helping is autoimmunity. So many people post their stories on his Instagram page where they had rheumatoid arthritis for 20 years. They were on all these medications. They went carnivore in a year, no medications. The proud joints are gone. I mean, if you didn't realize that it's all these different people, you would think it was a lie. So the carnivore diet is gaining a lot of popularity. You lose weight, and apparently it reduces inflammation dramatically, which is contrary to the common message that, beef gives you cancer and pork gives you cancer and all that sort of stuff. When you talk about these dietary effects, can you see any benefits why this would be happening in this population with glycan population to an all meat, all animal protein diet?
We don't know yet, but there are certainly the good cases of reduction in autoimmune diseases with it. So I think that will be an interesting one to study. We did have that study where we looked at different nutrient proportions, and high protein worked very well for some people and it didn't work for others. So I think we're very individual in how we metabolize all the different nutrients. So I think that is a personal thing. And certainly we have some very big enthusiasts about a diet who would have a poor score and then change their diet and have a good score. So I think it's very individual, but certainly for some people, it can work really well.
After the show, I'm going to send you, I have your email address now. I'm going to send you an email with Sean Baker's email address. You should reach out to him and offer him a free glycan test.
Well, I would love to follow his patients, clients for a period, particularly the ones with autoimmune diseases who are coming in, starting the diet, and then seeing a reduction in symptoms. Because a lot of the autoimmune disease, they don't have good solutions. We don't have good drugs for them. So they're pretty much stuck with very poor drugs. And so that'll be, and we have lots of research with rheumatoid arthritis and different types of autoimmune diseases. So that'll be, I would love that. Thank you.
So I have a theory about autoimmune diseases. I think that everybody on this planet today suffers from some form of leaky gut because of herbicides and pesticides that cause a breakdown in the mucosal barrier, drinking these boutique coffees on an empty stomach because of the turbidity of them and the microparticles of coffee beans that irritate the stomach. And over time, the protective mechanisms and the tight junctions in everybody on the planet today have been breached. To the degree of destruction of the stomach varies from person to person. And then when we eat plants specifically, these get into the bloodstream directly through the stomach, and the immune system goes after them. And while it's going after this, it goes, that thyroid tissue kind of looks like this. Let's go after the thyroid too. So that is my ultra simplistic, I have no degree in anything, theory on why we're seeing the increase in autoimmunity today. And I think coffee is a big player. The coffee that my mother and father drank, it was 4 ounces and you could see to the bottom of the cup. It was like brown water. Today, we're drinking literally mud. And people don't realize how irritating that is to the stomach. Coffee destroyed my stomach. I'm rebounding now. And when you look at studies around the country today, they estimate 66% of Americans have gut problems today. Some treatable by drugs, and some they just live with the distress. And I'll bet you every one of them drinks coffee. I'll bet money on it. So that's my theory on autoimmunity.
Yeah, well, from some microbiome studies, we see coffee is neutral. For some people have negative effects, some people have positive effects. On plants, that's an interesting theory. That would be something good to look at. We definitely know that this zonulin level is a problem. on plants, we know that if you're increasing the diversity of plants in your diet and you're not changing anything else in your diet, you're still having high protein or whatever it was before you started that can improve your glycans, or we have case studies that done that. And one reason why that works is because and it very much matters what type of plant. So if they were in local soil, then you're informing your environment, informing your immune system about your environment. Because whenever there's something foreign, the first response is inflammation. But if something is familiar to the immune system, it creates less inflammation. So if you're eating this big diversity of plants, then you're kind of feeding it as local environment and you have less inflammation.
Nicolina Lauk, thanks so much for being here. Those of you who are listening, if you want to have your glycan levels tested, go to glycanage.com. And thanks so much for being here.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care. We're going to take one quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to have Will Harris from White Oak Pastures on. And we're going to talk about this article from The Economist, which is a really silly article. I can't believe this stuff. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Verso contains potent compounds proven to increase NAD+. NAD+ is arguably the most important molecule in the body, and without it, you would die in less than 30 seconds. It's responsible for a number of physiological processes, one being that it guides longevity genes called sirtuins to direct cells in the body to perform their jobs. NAD+ levels drop with age, and when they're low, there isn't enough to guide sirtuins, so your cells start to break down. This explains why the body ages and consequently wrinkles appear. There is less benefit to exercise. It takes longer to recover. And an older body is not resilient like a young body. Start reversing biological age now. Go to shrnetwork.biz/verso and use the code SHR for 20% off plus free shipping on your bottle of Verso today. Have you been struggling to achieve results in the gym? Trouble sleeping through the night? Overwhelmed with stress or anxiety? Look no further than Infiniwell supplements. They have designed products to address specific needs like muscle growth, hormone balance, sleep, and anxiety from the first use. Infiniwell helps you live well. Go to shrnetwork.biz/bewell, that's BEWELL, and use code SHR20 and start living well today. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know that I have struggled to give up coffee for years. Coffee has destroyed my gut and it's impaired my health. Well, I haven't had coffee in months thanks to a product called Magic Mind. Magic Mind is the first nootropic blend I actually feel working. One shot and I'm good all day long. My memory is crystal clear and I'm able to function and have great focus without coffee or caffeine for that matter. If you want to try a product that really works, if you're like me and you want to give up coffee forever, or you just need something occasionally that will help you lift the brain fog, Magic Mind is your product. I promise you that this product you will feel when you use it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Magic Mind, all one word, and use the code SHR for a whopping 20% off your first order. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High quality, pasture raised, great tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose to tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code superhuman to save 10% off your entire first order. If you've listened to Superhuman Radio for any length of time, you know I'm a big proponent of peptides. One of my favorites is GHK-Cu, the blue copper peptide. It has the ability to repair and regenerate more youthful expression of skin cells, reversing the signs of aging. Restore a Cell's stem cell awakening serum, along with their other products, contain contains potent formulations of blue copper peptides and only the highest quality organic ingredients. Superhuman Radio listeners can now save 25% site-wide. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use the code SHR25. Remodel your skin today.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Hey, welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're being joined by Will Harris of White Oak Pastures. How you doing, Will?
Hey, Carl. Great. How are you?
Very good, very good. So I'm sure you saw the article that I forwarded to Jenny, right? About the Economist author suggesting that beef be treated like coal, that we need to work hard to eliminate our reliance on it and maybe even charge more money for people who want to use it. Did you see that?
I did see it, and I wish I could say it's the only time I've ever seen anything like that, but it's not. Sadly, it's not.
What I got to ask you, what's your assessment of why there's a group of people, mostly in political positions and media positions, that have a grievance with beef so much that they will lie? They literally lie. What do you think's going on here?
Well, I think I know what's going on. I think that this article that you sent us is a really bad determination that came from some pretty junky science, but there's a reason for it, and because I am a stockman from Georgia, I want to make one thing clear up front, that I'm not one of those meat producing guys that disparages against anyone who chooses to be vegetarian or vegan. That is a lifestyle choice that any individual has the right to make, and I'd go to war to defend a person's right to choose to be a vegetarian or vegan if that's what they wanted to do. And if they tell me that they choose to be vegan because they just can't bear the idea of eating something that was a living animal, I respect it. If they say it's because it's a yuck factor, it's just from the mouthfeel, I respect that. Fine. But if they tell me they don't eat meat because it's destroying the earth, then they need for me to talk to them, because I know some stuff that they don't know. And almost without fail, I can bring those people to understand. They may not start to eat meat, but they understand what my position is.
Right.
Sadly, though, there's another, I call it militant vegans, and they have made the decision that no one should eat meat. It's okay to decide you're not going to eat meat. It's not okay to decide no one should eat meat.
Right.
But that religion exists out there, and those people are very influential, very powerful, have very loud voices. And when that comes to bear with a lot of money, which is what there's a lot of money in the plant-based meat movement or other non-meat food companies, then you make a lot of noise. And there's no one on the planet that hadn't heard repeatedly over the last decade that cattle are destroying the earth. Livestock is destroying the earth, particularly cattle. And it is simply so wrong. I don't think I'm an expert in anything except regenerative land management, compassionate animal welfare, and rebuilding rural America. I'm very close to those three situations, and I've spent my life involved in them. And I can tell you, as an expert, without question, there is no way to cost effectively renovate degraded land without animal impact. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. cost effectively. I mean, Bill Gates could do a small place somewhere, but you can't regenerate the parts of the earth, vast areas of the earth that we have degraded with industrial farming without animal impact. I mean, think about it. It's how it evolved. This earth evolved with huge herds of ruminant prey animals being slowly chased across the landscape by predators. That's the way we got here. And to say that, yeah, but we've degraded the earth, caused desertification, so we're going to go back and re-evolve it. We're going to take out this huge component that was animal impact. Yeah, I just wish people knew how silly that sounds to a person that's known a lot of it.
Well, and I don't want to invoke COVID, but when we look at the population at large today, we have two groups of people that occupy America. We have critical thinkers and we have tribal thinkers. The tribal thinkers are like lemmings, right? When the first lemming goes over the cliff, the other one goes over the cliff. None of the lemmings go, wow, they just jumped to their death. I'm not doing that. They just follow. And that's what tribal thinkers are. Critical thinkers look at things, they assess it on a day-to-day basis, they sample the available information, they compare it to what they know to be true, what they see in their lives, and then they make decisions. And unfortunately, we're losing critical thinkers because there's a large population of people who want to abdicate their responsibility to someone else. Make this decision for me. I don't want to make this decision because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to make a mistake. So let government make this decision for me. And that never works out. In any historic events, it never works out when government makes decisions for you because they don't care about your welfare. They care about ruling. And so it's really sad because I want to, like, even if you had a sensible conversation with some of these people, you can't change their minds. I want to put something up here. This is a plaque that I use all the time on this show because I want to remind people, what are the average Americans consuming in a year? Those of you watching the video can see it. I'm going to recite it for those listening. But at the very, very top of this circle graph, there's a red spot that is probably about, I would say, 1/20th of the entire circle, which is all made up of what the average American eats, and that's red meat, about 110 pounds a year. Now, over to the left is fruits, 273 pounds a year. Below that is vegetables, 415 pounds a year. And then to the right of that is dairy, 600 pounds a year, which I find fascinating because they're going after red meat, but they're not going after dairy cows, probably because most of them like yogurt. But the least of these three categories, fruits, vegetables, and dairy, is red meat. So saying red meat or beef production or animal production for consumption is destroying the planet is a flat out lie, just from the fact that we are not eating that much. Now, if you'll humor me, I want to put one other placard up. Now, you're a farmer, and I'm sure you can speak to this. One of the things that's always not discussed when we talk about greenhouse gases is pesticides. We spray literally hundreds of millions of pounds of pesticides and herbicides on the grass that we're treating, which goes up into the air, which causes greenhouse gases. But guess what? Manufacturing pesticides actually causes greenhouse gases. When you look at the phosphate that they have to mine to create glyphosate, when you look at the production of, so when we look at growing plants, they are the single worst offenders of greenhouse gas production, both intrinsically and extrinsically, and animal death. You know, vegans fail to realize that literally thousands of animals are killed to till the soil and plant their kale. That, like, it just boggles my mind when you see someone saying something that's untrue. You get frustrated because you want to say to them, that's just not the truth. And that's all we see today when it's about beef or red meat in general. We see nothing but untruths. So I hope people start thinking for themselves. I'm sorry to steal the thunder there, but I had to get that out.
That was very well played. But when you consider the fact that I think the number I've heard most recently about the percentage of this country who are active farmers, it was a little less than 1% of us. And remember that probably 90-something% of that less than 1% is industrial farmers. So those of us who are have experienced genuine land regeneration, benefiting land, bringing back, restarting the cycles of nature, there are very few of us, and we don't have a very loud voice. We're not selling anything to anybody, so we're not out in terms of products to use in production. So we're not out passing out Bible tracts and buying expensive advertising. So there's just nobody to represent the truth, or very few of us to represent the truth in this situation. And people are so busy, such narrow bandwidth to devote to these things that I'm discussing, that it's just really hard to get the focus. And then that's further compounded by the fact that there is a thing called industrial cattle production that does do what the militant vegans say we do.
Yes.
You're right. You're right. But the friend of mine wrote a book called The Righteous Pork Chop. Her name's Nicolette Hahn Nyman. And she says, it's not the cow, it's the how. And that is so true.
I like that.
It is just so true. We really work hard to try to get people to come to our farm and look. There's this thing called greenwashing that devalues what people like us do. I'm not just talking about white oak pastures. Please understand. I'm representing a small number of farms like white oak pastures all across the country. But there's this thing called greenwashing, which is mostly big multinational corporations that spend a lot of money making it sound like the way they produce food is the way we do it. And that literally devalues what we do. And the only shield and sword farmers like us have to use against greenwashing is authenticity and transparency.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do Super Bowl ads. So we invite people to come here, and the offer is we'll show you anything you want to see. We slaughter animals on our farm. We have poultry slaughter and red meat slaughter, and you can go on the kill floor if you want to. You might not like it, but if you want to see it, we'll show it to you.
Right.
I don't like going there, but I do. So that transparency and authenticity are the shield and sword. And if a thinking person comes to my farm and goes to trouble to look, if you can't come to the farm, go to social media. That'll tell you what you need to know. And we can change the way people think, but that's a very small percentage of the public.
I want to also talk about something else with this time. I want to talk about how excited I am to be eating white oak pastures, animal proteins, carrying a wallet. People don't realize this. So you have a skin cream made with tallow, and I use it on my hair now too. When I put it on my face, I just go right up and I put it in my hair as well. But the quality of the product is very evident. The second you put it on the grill or you cut a slice of something and taste it, there's nothing like the meats that I have gotten from your farm. But I've had this theory, and I want to run it by you. I know that in scientific research, we use rodents, but they like to use pigs. In fact, they're breeding these miniature pigs now for scientists because pigs are more like humans when you look at the organs. I mean, we just had the first person receive a pig heart as a transplant just a couple days ago. Armor thyroid that I take is made from porcine thyroid, pig thyroid. And I'm starting to think that pork, not beef, is the most appropriate meat for humans to eat. Has that thought ever crossed your mind?
To be honest, I've never thought about it in exactly that way. They're certainly very different, as you pointed out. Pork or hogs, like us, are monogastric omnivores. One stomach, one section of the stomach, and they can and do eat both meat and vegetation. Cattle, on the other hand, are ruminants. And so I don't know. You know, I told you I am really good at land management, animal husbandry, and the rural economy. I'm not when it comes to matters of nutrition and physiology and diet, I leave it to those who know. I will say this, that as a farmer, I raised at least 10 different species of animals on my farm, and there's a reason for that. We raise cows, hogs, sheep, goats, rabbits, and hand butcher them in a USDA inspected red meat slaughterhouse on the farm. We pasture raise chickens, turkeys, geese, guineas, and ducks, and hand slaughter them in a separate facility here on the farm. All the waste goes back out onto the land. I brought that up to say that we raise those 10 species intentionally because every species has a very separate impact on the animal, a very unique impact on the land. That's what I said, on the animal, on the land. And we use that animal impact to shape the land, to bring it back into production, restarting the cycles of nature. So, you know, I hope people keep eating beef and pork because I really need to keep raising cows and hogs because I need both cattle impact, which is a very unique impact, and I need hog impact, which is a very different impact, to keep my land moving successionally towards a savanna, which is that's the context that we choose for this farm here.
That's fascinating. So you actually have a model that you're chasing. It's a savanna. Interesting.
We have a very intentional model. I call what we do prescriptive grazing because I literally look at the land to see what it needs. And it needs the disruption that all animal impact is disruptive. And disruption is necessary, but it's a measured disruption. Mm-hmm. And the disruption from a cow is different from the disruption of a hog, different from the disruption of a chicken. But it's part of the evolutionary process.
Right.
You know, you don't have an island that had nothing but hogs on it, and another island that had nothing but cattle on it.
Right.
Because nature abhors a monoculture. Those are monoculture. Nature will not tolerate a monoculture. Nature wants a smorgasbord of different species of plants and animals and microbes living in symbiotic relationships with each other.
It's fascinating. For those of you who have never tried White Oak Pastures, if you go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code Superhuman, you'll save 10% off. I promise you, there's no better animal protein in the world than what you can get at White Oak Pastures. And they have such a variety. You know, like right now I'm hooked on Italian sausages. Elisa just ordered me some more Italian sausage. We bought wallets for Christmas. They have wallets that they make out of the hides there. I mean, when they say nose to tail, they really mean it. Nothing goes to waste at White Oak Pastures. They use every part of the animal to produce something of value. It's nothing like it. Bone broth, amazing bone broth. No matter what you prefer, you will find it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code Superhuman today. You'll be thankful that you did. Will, thanks so much for joining us today to kind of clear up the nonsense that continues to permeate the media about how bad beef is. We eat less beef and pork then we do vegetables and fruits independently each. So, and one other thing I want to mention, arable land is land that you can plant on. There's like 450 million acres of non-arable land. Guess who uses it? Farmers who raise cattle and pigs, because a cow will walk up a hill and eat the grass, but you can't plant on that hill and grow corn or soybean. So we got to break through the nonsense. People need to educate themselves and be sensible. We wouldn't have the planet we have today if it wasn't for the animals that live among us. So don't be fooled by the mainstream media, please. Will, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day and coming here today.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. That's it for today. And I don't have any other shows this week. It was just a Tuesday through Thursday routine here. But we have great shows for next week. So please tune in. And don't forget, share the show. I ask everybody to do this all the time. Have you? Have you ever done it? Haven't I given you everything I can for 16 years now? Share the show. And remember, this show is made possible by the sponsors. So without them, we don't have a show. So always patronize the sponsors when possible. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you Monday.